Okay, in 55, he prohibited us not to distance the Egyptians and to abhor marriage to them after they've entered the Jewish religion, and that is his may be exalted, saying, you shall not abhor an Egyptian in the third generation. The regulations of this commandment and the commandments about the Edomite have already been explained in the eighth chapter of Yevamot at the end of Kedushin. And we looked in the Rambam's codes about this, where he made it clear that since the nations in that region had been moved around and mixed up, so the commandments about waiting for a third generation for Egyptians no longer apply, as with the Edomites, and the Moabites and the Ammonites, and the various restrictions. The assumption here is that a reason why you would distance yourself from Egyptians is because of the way they treated us, and had us in exile for all those years. The fact that the Torah does not want us to is a sort of curious detail about how we reflect back on the Exodus in Egypt. When you put a lot of the details together, certainly the Egyptians are punished for what they did, and there's discussion about why that would be. After all, it was something that was forecast. Abraham was told that his descendants would eventually be in circumstances that we later find out are the Egyptian exile. So it was something that was forecast to happen. It was something that was supposed to happen. If it's something that's supposed to happen, then why are the Egyptians punished at all for it? And so you have various explanations given, the Rambam, the Ramban, and others. One is that they did not have to, in other words, this is something that had to happen, but there might have been choice as to whether or not they're the ones in particular who have to be the ones to do it. So in this kind of combination of fate and choice, something is supposed to happen, but you don't necessarily have to be the agent through which it happens. So that's a possibility, that the eagerness of Egyptians to play this role is part of why they're being punished. Another one is that they could have played this role without the cruelty that they exhibited. In other words, it was something that was supposed to happen, but they didn't have to enjoy it, and they certainly didn't have to take it to the levels of cruelty that it was taken to. These are discussions that are specific to Paro, but they are also about the Egyptian people as a whole. The specific question with Paro is that it looks like his freedom of choice is taken away, because it says God hardened his heart, and there's all sorts of discussion there. If his freedom of choice is taken away, the question is, why is he punished at the end? So one of the answers is because his freedom of choice is not taken away right away. And this is the Rambam's explanation, that a person can embark on a path and commit to a certain kind of path, and then down the road his free will might be taken away. He's punished for the original decision to go down this path and his commitment to that path. What is the point of taking his free will away? Because now he can be used as a kind of instrument of fate down the road, but he's not necessarily going to be judged for what happened afterwards. He's going to be judged for what his decisions and choices up until that part. But again, for the Egyptian people in general, it could be said that their willingness to enslave the people, to be the agents of what is the fate of the Jewish people, and the cruelty with which they went about it, is why they are being punished for what happened. But at the same time, this is the sort of interesting thing about this command and certain other statements in the Torah about how we are, for instance, supposed to treat strangers with a special sense of empathy because we ourselves were strangers in another land. There is this kind of multi-layered approach to the Egyptian experience. Some of it seems to be punishment. It looks like the brothers are carrying forward some defect that had to do with their selling Yosef and down to Egypt. They're carrying this forward, and it needs to be dealt with. And there's going to be something that happens during the Egyptian exile that is going to sort of cleanse us of whatever that defect was. If you look at the Torah up until the Egyptian exile, one of the features of a lot of the stories is hatred amongst siblings. Whereas after the Egyptian exile, the siblings, it's primarily Moshe, Miriam, and Aaron, but the siblings are the opposite. They are shown to have a deep kind of confiding relationship with each other. There are still moments where they get upset with each other, but it's always in a kind of loving context. So part of the theme is that there was that to take care of. There's a midrash that says that when Abraham was told that his offspring are going to be a great nation in a land, he asked, "B'ma'eda, how will I know about the land?" And that was considered some kind of lack of faith, and therefore we have to go down to Egypt to fix that. So there could be many contributory reasons for why we ended up in Egypt for our own sake, nothing to do with the Egyptians per se, but for our own work. And this, when we leave Egypt, it seems like, on the one hand, we're warned not to go back and live in Egypt. So we're not supposed to think of it as a kind of second home for the Jewish people. We're meant to move past it, let go of Egypt, and move forward. But at the same time, Egypt was an important place for us. And so we're supposed to also recognize that. And we're not supposed to have a lingering resentment to Egyptians. And this is sort of maybe an interesting another series of details in the Torah that are useful for a conversation about forgiveness. In the past, we've talked about how there's not a lot in Tanakh that guides us on how to be forgiving. There's a lot about how to ask for forgiveness and to try to change our behavior, the tshuva part of it, but not as much about how to be forgiving. There is the Yosef story, which has a lot of good information about how to be forgiving. But if you piece some of these together, there seems to be material for another subject about forgiveness, which is how we look back at the Egyptian experience. So that's sort of interesting. Okay. He prohibited us from ever making peace with Ammon and Moab, and that is since God may be exalted already commanded us that we come to wage war with a city. We ask for peace before the war and request from them that they make peace with us. And if in response they give the city over to our hands, it's forbidden us to wage war against them and kill them, as we explained in Commandments 190 of the Positive Commandments. However, this is except for Ammon and Moab. We saw from the Rambam, this even applies to the 7 nations, and it even applies to Amalek, but it does not apply to Ammon and Moab, as we do not follow this practice with them. Rather, God may be exalted, prohibit us from calling out to them for peace and seek peace with them. And this is, may he be exalted, saying you should not seek their peace nor their prosperity. The language of the Sifrei is, it is implied from its being stated, when you near a city to do battle against it, you should call out to it for peace. That maybe the same should be done here. Hence, we're going to say, you shall not seek their peace nor their prosperity all the days of your life forever. And again, the Rambam had already said that these peoples, we don't know who they are anymore. And so Israel did have peace with Jordan, which is the land of Ammon. And it may also include Moab in it, but it's certainly Ammon. And it would appear, in theory, that they were not in violation of this commandment, because they are no longer considered to be the nation of Ammon, even though I think everybody agrees that the city of Amman is where Ammon was during those times. Okay. When we go to besiege a city, he prohibited us from destroying trees in order to distress its people and sadden their hearts. That is, his may be exalted, saying you must not destroy its trees. Likewise, does any waste come under this prohibition, such as one who burns up a garment for nothing or breaks a vessel? He also transgresses on account of you must not destroy, and is lashed. And they say in Makos, and its prohibition is from here, for from it shall you eat, but it shall you not cut down. The regulations of this commandment have already been explained in chapter 2 of Bava Batra. So this, it's the actual prohibition is called Bal Tashchis, and that is the commandment against destruction for no purpose. It appears from here, by the way he's characterizing it, that you're not allowed to destroy a tree. It's understood that these are fruit trees, the trees that could bear fruit. You're not allowed to destroy them, as it says here, in order to, because when they see destruction of things they cherished, it's a crushing blow to them. So you're not allowed to destroy the trees for that purpose. If you needed access to people that were trying to kill you, let's say they were hiding amongst fruit trees, it seems like you would be able to destroy them. It's just here, you're not doing it as a pragmatic strategy of war. You're sort of just destroying them so that they will lose heart, but it's not pragmatically necessary. That's when you're doing this in war, but this prohibition is carried over, and you're not allowed to destroy fruit trees even to this day, unless there's some very important pragmatic reason to do so. There are all sorts of articles you can find about people who sort of heroically kept their fruit trees around even when they were building house additions, and they sort of creatively work it into how their addition is done because they don't want to destroy the fruit trees.
Except hurricanes destroy fruit trees,
Right.
So that sounds sort of goddish to me, you know what I mean? That from hurricane, I don't know what you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, these commandments I think you could say it about all 613 commandments, are commandments about what we should do. And it doesn't seem like there's any commandment that I can think of in the Torah that applies to God. They only apply to humans. And even things like the prohibition against revenge or jealousy or things like that. And though we don't think God necessarily has human emotions, but his actions are characterized like that. And he acts out of those things, and he kills people, he destroys property, does all sorts of things. And the Torah is commandment for humans. It's not commandments for God. The assumption is that God is working in a different system than we are. And for our system, these commandments are necessary in order for us to fulfill our mission. In his system, they are not necessary. And he is using all sorts of calculations in order to figure out how to best get his end result done. But God is, whenever we have a commandment, we sort of understand that they are meaningful within the constraints that humans live. We live in a kind of closed system. And within that closed system, all these things are necessary and make sense, or at least a lot of them make sense and are necessary. But that's only in the closed system that we live in. God doesn't live in this closed system.
Okay.
Even when Abraham says this would not be God's justice, like to destroy Sodom, he means the system of justice that you are instructing me in. He doesn't, in other words, within the world that I occupy, this doesn't make sense. And the very fact that God is telling him about it seems to be the clue that Abraham has that he can bring this up. Because otherwise he would just say, what God does, he does, and he has his own reasons for it, and he doesn't have to live within the systems of rules that I have. So a lot of adults do this with children. There are certain rules for children that they are responsible for and can be punished if they break the rules. And adults are not constrained by these rules. They don't matter for adults. So a child could have curfew, or a child could be expected to do homework. All manner of things or rules about how children can talk, or that they have to speak with respect to their elders, or all these kind of things. These are a system of rules that make sense within the world the child occupies, and they're for the best interest of the child, even though others that are not part of it. Same kind of thing with the military. There's all sorts of rules for how a soldier has to behave, and they can be punished for violating these rules. Whereas in the civilian world, they are not rules, and the people are not punished for doing exactly the same thing. So it's sort of like that. You have a closed system. Within that system, there's all sorts of rules, but those rules apply to humans. They don't necessarily apply to God. So this can apply to the destruction of trees, but we saw already in the Rambam that he had mentioned, like, if you want to knock that tree down because of the wood, because you're going to use the wood to build something, you're allowed to do that. So it's not that you're never allowed to cut them down. You're just not supposed to cut them down sort of needlessly. And then he abridged, he built a bridge to other kinds of what we would call needless destruction. So destroying things for no real purpose is also called bal tashchis and is forbidden to do. And obviously there are circumstances that are considered more black and white. There are circumstances that are less black and white. There's a famous story. Rabbi Aryeh Levin was walking with Rav Kook, and Rav Kook asked him, "What are you doing?" And Rabbi Aryeh Levin didn't even know what he had done, and then he realized he had plucked a leaf off of a tree, and he and was just rubbing it with his fingers or whatever as they were walking. And Rav Kook said to him, "You should never, do something like that without purpose. Why would you pluck? It's part of a living thing, and now you've plucked it. And what did you need it for? It was a mindless act of destruction." So, and there is that connection to life, which seems, it's not true with all bal tashchis. The bal tashchis even applies to inanimate objects. It could apply to something made out of plastic or wood or, that is no longer living. But you even see there was a Kabbalistic notion that you should not end life of animals. So putting an animal to sleep, a Jewish person should. This is a Kabbalistic idea. This is not a halachic idea. This is a mystical idea, but it's out there. It's a pretty strong one. I once talked to a Jewish vet about this, and it's one of those issues. It's almost impossible for a Jew to halachically become a veterinarian, especially a big part of veterinary practice is castrating animals, and halachically you're not allowed to castrate animals. So that's a huge problem. And then there's the problem of putting them to sleep, of euthanizing them, especially euthanizing a healthy animal. I don't know what the rate of euthanization of healthy animals is today. It used to be, quite high, because whenever there were a lot of shelters that would euthanize the animals that were in their shelters. I know there's a lot of no-kill shelters nowadays, and they're not euthanizing anywhere near as many as they used to, but I'm assuming the numbers are still high of healthy animals that are being euthanized. Even when they're not healthy, there is a preference to have the person who's euthanizing them be not Jewish. Again, this is a Kabbalistic notion. This is not it's not a halachic notion. Halachically, you're not allowed to cause suffering to animals. And so, so I specifically asked this question to Rav Scheinberg one time. It says you're not allowed to cause suffering to animals. What about if you killed them in a way that doesn't cause them suffering? Is there any prohibition against killing them? And that's when he emphasized this sort of Kabbalistic notion. But halachically, there is no prohibition against doing it. When I was talking to the Jewish veterinarian, what happened was she had become from, I don't think she started from, she had become from eventually. So by the time I spoke to her, she was a from person who was a veterinarian. but when she was going to school, I don't think she was. She went to Brown, I think, and she went to the veterinary school. And she told me about this instance where a woman brought in her cat who she wanted euthanized, perfectly healthy, but she had redecorated the house and the cat didn't fit the decor. And so she couldn't have the cat in the house and she couldn't imagine anybody else with her cat. So she insisted that the cat be euthanized. That was one of her examples of euthanizing pets for absolutely no good reason. And it wasn't.
Did she do it? Did she do it?
I don't remember what she said. I don't. They certainly didn't want to, but I don't know what the. I don't know what she did in the end.
You know, Rabbi, as a pet lover myself and having a number of dogs, there was nothing worse than when the dog was, full of cancer and dying. And I, as a owner, should have put the dog down earlier, but because I couldn't do it because of my sake, I waited too long. You know what I mean? And the point I'm making is that you have to put the animal down if the animal's suffering, from an illness.
Yeah, I did. I mean, I did it with our dog, and I certainly understand that. But this notion, you could see, like, you could have competing notions here, which is, on the one hand, you are meant to be concerned about the suffering of animals. On the other hand, you're not supposed to waste life. That's a sense. So you have these kind of competing things, and they tug at you a little bit to this direction, a little bit to that direction, and then when it comes to the actual moment, you have to make a call. And either way, they're very difficult calls. But again, this prohibition doesn't just apply to things that are alive; it also applies to destroying things that are not alive, like useful vessels, like let's say somebody, like, I wonder, for instance, let's say you use real plates and shoot them, for sport. I don't know if they use real plates. They're not, when they do skeet shooting, those are clearly designed for skeet shooting. But even something like that, it would be an interesting halachic discussion about whether something like that would be permitted. Would it make a difference if they're designed to be broken? If they were something that is not designed to be broken, would skeet shooting, the fact that you are getting recreation from doing it, be a satisfactory reason for it? So
Rabbi?
I could see it being an issue. Yeah.
Sharon just mentioned, because she's sitting in on this, she basically, you're talking about all these unnecessary destructions. How about breaking a glass at the chuppah?
Right. So if you have, if there, I mean, that's a legitimate question. And then one of the issues you'd bring up is that, and this does get brought up in the Torah, like, for instance, tearing kriya. There's a mitzvah to tear kriya when after you hear that somebody died. But when you tear kriya, you're destroying clothing. So there are exceptions to this rule when there's some kind of pragmatic benefit. The thing is, you have to, gather the data and look at the different circumstances and see if you can come up with some kind of parameters. So would you say that, like, breaking a glass under the chuppah and a tearing kriya, they seem to provide enough pragmatic benefit that it's considered permissible? Could you apply this to other circumstances? So what I might do is, like, have a couple instances, like tearing kriya, breaking the glass under the chuppah, and then skeet shooting. So and sort of compare and contrast them to see if they, let's say, skeet shooting shares the kind of pragmatic benefit that seems to be achieved through tearing kriya or breaking a glass under a chuppah, or breaking the plate at the tanoim. That has become a strong custom at weddings. So there you're clearly doing something that is destructive. So first of all, how are you allowed to do them? And then let's say you come to the conclusion that when there's a pragmatic benefit, you're allowed to destroy it. Like, for instance, when it comes to laws of Shabbos, one of the prohibited activities is destroying, knocking something down. It's called soser. So soter. So it's one of the 39 categories of things you're not allowed to do. Now, specifically, it is soser amanas livnos, soter amanat livnot, which means you're knocking something down so you can build up. So, for instance, let's say you have a problematic wall in your house, so you're going to break down the wall and then put up a new one. So that kind of destruction is biblically forbidden on Shabbos. We've talked about before how when something's biblically prohibited on Shabbos, that's a good indication that it is real creative work. So it's considered creative to knock it down for the purpose of rebuilding it. It's part of the rebuilding process to knock it down first. So there can be times when you're destroying something or knocking it down, and it's considered to be a positive, creative act, and that can often be a permit for a destructive act. Like we were saying before, if you're knocking down the tree because you're going to use the wood to build something, then you're allowed to cut down the tree. So, again, you'd have to look at each situation. When you find the areas that have been clearly identified as permitted, you're trying to gather as much as you can about them so that you can find that line between what is permitted and what is prohibited. Okay.
Harmony?
Yeah.
What's that mean?
All right.
Dishes,
You do that?
yeah, you have to throw them away if they're unkosher.
What do you do?
Destroying unkosher dishes,
Destroying unkosher what?
Dishes.
you know, like.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Let's say dishes are not kosher anymore, and you don't want you don't want them to be mistakenly used. So that would be another example where they would encourage you perhaps to destroy it. Also, things that are impure. Yeah, so you would find all these circumstances, and you'd compare and contrast them so that you could come to some kind of understanding of the parameters of when. So
It sounds really difficult, you know. I mean, because the other thing I was just thinking about was, what's the thing called where you take the papers that have God's name and you can't tear them up, but you have to put them in what's it called?
Right. So there it's the opposite. There you're not supposed to destroy it, and therefore bury it. So there you're not allowed to destroy it, but there it's not because of this prohibition. There it's because of erasing Torah or erasing God's name, or treating something that was Torah disrespectfully. So there, again, it's a separate prohibition, and you're specifically not destroying them. Whereas here you are. The case I'd be interested in is something like skeet shooting, or using something as a target, let's say for bows and arrows or darts. Let's say you find something around and you want to use it for that. So there, be interested if play is an excuse. It would be interesting to explore that, because it's interesting to explore play in general. What if it's considered halachically important that a person play, have recreation and play. So let's say the psychological advantage of tearing kriya, or the emotional message sent by breaking the cup at the wedding. So those, you could argue, have emotional or psychological impact, and are considered important in the moment. So it'd be interesting to halachically explore play. And one of the ways you might do it is to see if recreation is enough of an excuse to destroy things. That'd be interesting. Okay, I look forward to more learning together, but not until after Sukkot. I don't think we're gonna, my schedule's not in my hands during Chol Moed. So we are doing Daf Yomi, but I can't, I'm just gonna say we're not gonna learn during Chol Moed. So we're gonna start again on that first Monday after Sukkot, if that's okay with you guys. I look forward to that.
Which Monday is that, Rabbi?
It's the one the day after Sukkot.
Oh, okay.
I don't know what the,
So the next Monday or the week from Monday? 20. All right, I'm just a little mixed up because Sharon and I are leaving tomorrow for Sarasota.
What's a story in Sarasota? What have you heard?
Pardon me?
What have you heard about Sarasota? Is everything in place?
No, there was a lot of debris. And people closer to the water got it.
How about you guys?
No, we were very lucky. We lost power for 6 days, but we're not there, so it doesn't. So we have to do and what? And a little landscaping damage. So we really got away with.
Okay. Do you have a screened-in porch?
Yeah, so the lanai, they have a few of the screens have to be replaced.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
All right.
All
Okay.
right, but I'll talk to you.
Okay.
I'll call
All right.
in, the morning.
Okay.
All right. Thanks.
Be well.
Have a
All right.
very pleasant Sukkot. And I
You
hope,
too. You too. Chag
I hope-
Sameach.
I hope
Chag
follow my
Sameach
way.
Chag Sameach, everybody.
Chag Sameach.
Okay.
What were you saying, David?
I hope it passes quickly. If
Sukkot.
it passes quickly, it means that you're having a good time. And the sooner I get to see you and learn with you,
Okay.
the happier I am.
Okay. Well, it all passes quickly at our age. It's not.
I know.
All right. All right. Be well.
Okay. Okay.
All right.
Be well, Sam.
Rabbi, did you start the hello?
Yeah.
Did you start the TV
Yeah, but
show?
it only has 4 episodes.
No, it has. I think is it 4?
I mean, it didn't finish. In Masterpiece, I have Masterpiece. Like I have a subscription to Masterpiece. It's Masterpiece Mysteries. Is it possible they're only letting it go 1 episode at a time?
What do you mean?
Because I'm watching it on Masterpiece Mysteries, and then I got through episode 4. It's not the end, but then it just stopped at episode 4.
I thought there were 6.
There has to be more than 4. So I'm wondering if for some reason they're just dropping it 1 episode at a time.
I don't know.
Anyways, I like it a lot.
You like it?
Yeah, I like it.
Good. All right.
All right.
Hope you find the missing 2.
Me
All
too.
right. Bye bye.
All right. Be well. Bye-bye.